Here we go. It is Indiana in the Morning. As always, we are presented by First Commonwealth Bank here on AM 1160 WCCS and 101.1 FM. And our interview with Lydia Reeder this morning is brought to you by Bradley's Book Outlet. You can get this book and others at Bradley's Book Outlet in the Indiana Mall. And the book is Dust Bowl Girls, the inspiring story of the team that barnstorms its way to basketball glory. Let's hear from Lydia Reeder this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Now, where am I calling you from? Where are you?
I am in Denver, Colorado.
I've heard of that place.
Yeah, it's a little,
Is
west.
Is basketball big in Denver? Girls basketball, college basketball?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. It seems to have really taken root here and all across the nation, and certainly we watched it to college basketball, but the kind of basketball that we would have watched in the 1930s is entirely different from what we're seeing now. Dust Bowl Girls talks about girls basketball under the old rules and in an old society that has long since gone away, but we cannot afford to forget it. And this particular book, you do such a wonderful job of setting the scene for us for this amazing basketball team.
Oh, yes. The scene, the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression was basically another character in the book. It had to be, because they were battling that as well as their opponents.
And here comes this team from right in the heart of the Dust Bowl, and these girls from the Depression era, and their families all afflicted by it. And certainly Oklahoma was right there. And all of a sudden they have this golden opportunity to all gather at one small school and have their education paid for. And they're introduced not only to basketball at a brand new level for them, but to life at a level that they've never known.
Absolutely. They had hot running water and heat in their rooms. It was completely different from what they were used to. Definitely traveling to a different world when they go to Durant, Oklahoma, where Oklahoma Presbyterian College was.
And Sam Babb is the man who put it all together. What an interesting character from his childhood, a very tragic incident with his family that cost him a leg, and then his decision to go forward with this amazing program that changed the lives of so many people. Talk about Sam Babb as a character in the book. He seems like he's out of central casting.
He did seem like that, and I really had to work hard because I never knew him. He was my great uncle, but I needed to work hard to really figure him out. And he definitely stood out back then. First of all, because he coached women like he coached men, which means he coached them to win. And also, like you said, because he was missing a leg and had to walk with a wooden prosthetic. I think that particular accident made him a champion, definitely a champion for the underdogs. He grew up with 6 sisters, so he was comfortable talking to and coaching young women. Basically, he was a steady and strategic coach and really, really made them work hard and show up for practice, and he created a hard routine for them, at least for them. He was also a psychology professor there at Oklahoma Presbyterian College, which definitely was part of the way he coached. For him, perseverance, sacrifice, and teamwork was part of his coaching strategy, and also everyone participated. He would always say, no team is better than its poorest substitute. He didn't believe in shortcuts at all.
Great rivalries, and we'll talk about the biggest of them in just a moment. But the basketball game itself was played so differently for women and girls back in the 1930s. 6 players on the court for each team. Yes. Three on the offensive end, 3 on the defensive end, and you don't cross midcourt.
No, you don't cross midcourt, and you were only allowed 1 below-the-knee dribble before you passed off or took a shot. So they called lots of traveling.
I would guess, yeah.
But they became experts experts at passing the ball and also shooting the ball. They were called shot makers back then. They really knew how to have that dead eye and reach the goal.
So the Cardinals are our heroic team here, led by some wonderful characters themselves. Doll Harris is the big offensive star. I love the insecurity and yet the fortitude of Lucille, who is the center, and Vic, the defender. It's just amazing to watch them all come together from these various backgrounds and become this championship barnstorming basketball team. Basketball back in that day, the Barnstormers, they would play high school teams. They'd play anybody they could get, wouldn't they?
They would play anybody they could get. They even, after they became really well known, they would play men's teams or boys' high school basketball teams. They would, partly because they were self-financed, and so they needed the money from. They always got half the ticket receipts wherever they played. So they would have sort of a set schedule, but then the games would come up, and if there were going to be an opportunity to really play some good basketball and make a little bit of money, they would do it.
So here they are, and they are headed for the big prestigious tournament. There are two rival groups heading women's basketball. AAU basketball is the one that eventually prevails, and here comes OPC, and they're playing the team led by Babe Didrikson.
Yes.
And that's the most famous name in women's athletics probably still in this day.
Oh, good. She deserves to be there. She was phenomenal.
Absolutely. And they play them 3 times, and they're the queens of the court, as is described in all of the newspaper articles. And 3 times they play them, 3 amazing basketball games. And I really have to congratulate you on the way you covered those games. It's just a great, masterful job of writing.
Oh, thank you so much. I loved it. I read, fortunately, once they started getting popular, the newspapers covered their games a lot. So I was able to take several different articles giving me different points of view, plus from interviews, and that's how I learned to play 6-on-6 basketball, basically, and reading a lot of books written back then about that. So it was quite something.
These games and the atmosphere they created, it was just not seemly for girls to play in this way. And all of a sudden the fans get into it, the girls get into it, and it's on, as they would say in today's language.
Yes, and that definitely, turned a few heads and caused a few frowns back then from certain people who didn't like it. But the coaches, especially Sam, always tried to make an atmosphere of sort of protection around these young women, even though they wanted to have a good game and a hard, fast game, and they were always trying to find ways to modify the rules to make it a little bit more exciting. They also had strict, they all had chaperones and they all had curfews. So a lot of it was very strict. It was definitely not a free-for-all. Oh,
I love the way that you describe the way they go about their business, too. There's one girl who's on the team, young lady on the team, whose nickname is Peep.
Yes.
And she ends up driving the bus, and she's the mechanic, and it's just fantastic to meet these young ladies who become real trailblazers for women's basketball.
I fell in love with them as I continued writing the book, and it became definitely as much about them as it was about my, great uncle.
Mm-hmm.
They were known as the Mighty Cardinals, and the newspaper articles would say, and they played a very fast brand of basketball.
Oh, they just, just to read about it. The Cardinal Reunion of 1958 must have been something as well.
I can imagine. I became friends with the person Virginia Hamilton, who organized those reunions.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the photograph and thought, oh my gosh, these women were very sophisticated as they got older.
Yeah, yeah. People need to get this book. They need to understand about women's basketball, where it came from, how it developed, and what a key point this particular, a real pivot point in the history of women's athletics in general, the Dust Bowl girls were.
Absolutely. And that's the other point, is that it was almost known as the Golden Age. I read one writer referred to it as the Golden Age of women's basketball because they were just exploding as far as the number of women who started playing, not just basketball, but other sports too. But basketball was the most popular sport among women, and they were becoming very, very, very good.
They indeed were world changers. The Dust Bowl girls. Lydia Reeder has been our guest, the inspiring story of the team that barnstormed its way to basketball glory. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning.
Oh, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Bye-bye. Have a wonderful day.
Yes, you too.